Welcome everybody, welcome to Tokyo. We are here today with Frank from 5 a.m. Ramen, and he's going to take us to some great ramen shops. Is that the deal, Frank?
Indeed, that
I'm
is the
ready.
plan.
So, where are we now?
We are in Shinjuku.
Okay.
Shinjuku is a great ramen neighborhood in Tokyo, and we are starting at a place called Mensho San Francisco.
So we're in a shopping mall.
Correct.
This is new school ramen.
Absolutely. Modern, new school, elegant, whatever you want to call it, this place does things a little bit differently.
Okay, so let's go in and try some ramen.
Let's do it. Let's
Cool.
do it.
So what is ramen?
Well, first of all, I'm biased, but
Okay.
it's the most delicious dish out there. I think, ramen in essence is broth, noodles, and toppings, which describes, I think, a lot of great noodle dishes around the world.
Well
So it's basically, there's something simple about it, right? In that it is just broth, noodles, and toppings. But what I find fascinating about ramen is that it has evolved and come a long way from its beginnings. And I'm mentioning this because ramen is actually a pretty young dish. It's not that old.
Okay.
Only about 100 years old, actually.
I find that very interesting because through what I do with the old cookbook show and going
You-
through the old cookbooks, a lot of dishes really are only 100 years old. Yeah.
And ramen is no different.
Okay.
That's true.
So-
A lot of these cuisines we think of as super old, but not the case.
So it's really not that old then.
No. And there are elements in it. If we, look at each of those categories, broth, noodles, and toppings, there are elements in it, maybe particularly the broth, that make it more Japanese.
Okay.
But it's interesting because it's a dish with Chinese roots. So think of ramen as like a Japanese-Chinese hybrid. And in terms of the Japanese elements, we've got things like soy sauce for the seasoning, maybe fish flakes, bonito fish flakes used as the flavor foundation. We've got kelp in the soup. Coming from China, maybe a meatier pork soup or chicken soup, for example. So you're kind of combining elements from both cultures, and that's essentially what ramen is. It is a Chinese-Japanese hybrid, even though it's very much a Japanese dish today. Exactly.
Very cool. So today here we're going to experience new Japanese ramen.
Exactly.
Okay.
New age, modern, definitely a place that pushes, let's say, the boundaries of ramen.
So often with a dish that is rooted in the mythology of tradition,
Yes.
how does the average Japanese person react to modern ramen?
That's a good question, and I think it depends on where you are in the country. You have very regional ramen styles, for example,
Yeah.
where even though ramen is relatively young, within that short period, they're like, well, this is the way we've always done it, even though their ancestors were the ones experimenting to make ramen.
Sure.
After they experimented and changed the dish and it became ramen, they're like, well, this is the way it should be. Tokyo, not the case. You have a lot of places like this that are willing to push the boundaries, maybe create new styles of ramen. And that's what I find interesting compared to even soba or udon, for example, where it's more, this is the way it is.
Sure.
Maybe it doesn't need to be changed. And there are a lot of other Japanese foods like that. I often use sushi as an example. Japan is much more old school in its approach to sushi. California rolls are not considered sushi in Japan. For example, I enjoy California rolls; they're
Yep.
tasty. But
Yep.
ramen, it's not so simple. There are things again with broth, noodles, and toppings that make it more like ramen, but it's a little trickier. Some places will go in even a zany direction, as we'll see here.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. This is a matcha tori paitan, or a rich chicken ramen with matcha green tea in the soup. We have a beautifully presented bowl here. There is Wagyu beef on top. We've got green negi, or spring onions, in the middle there. And on the side, we've got fried gobo, or burdock roots, deep fried. So wonderful textures coming from both those two vegetables, let's say. Wonderful protein, melt in your mouth Wagyu. And then last but not least, right in the middle there, that island of white is actually almond cream. This is not a bitter matcha that they're using, but as matcha can be bitter, that almond cream brings down the bitterness, makes it a smoother tasting soup. Excellent, excellent execution. As unusual as it sounds, they make it work. It works really well, the matcha with the soup. And this one over here, so this is the regular tori paitan. The regular tori paitan is basically without the matcha. So we've got that beautiful chicken soup with the same toppings that we just discussed, and a bit of truffle oil on top. Now, truffle oil tastes wonderful, of course. Truffles taste great, but I feel like they don't use it here overpoweringly so. Truffle, I think, is sometimes maybe even a crutch in food, right? You put it on, it's like, oh yeah, of course it's gonna taste good. But it's used sparingly, just enough to maybe give it a more elegant flavor. Both are great, and that rich chicken broth is just, oh, it's to die for. So what we have in front of me is a Wagyu tantan men. Tantan men with Wagyu beef. Tantan men is a spicy style of ramen that is derived from Chinese dandan noodles from Sichuan province. The Japanese version of it, or tantan men, take the D, replace it with a T, tantan men, is milder though because they use a lot of sesame. And this one's no different. You've got a lot of chili oil swimming on top there, but also sesame to bring it, to have it, let's say, have a more mellow flavor, a smoother flavor. And there's still gonna be that chili oil spice and also some numbing pepper, but the sesame really rounds things out. And the Wagyu are also making an appearance in this one. We've got dried tomato here for a little bit of sourness and acidity. Also the spring onions here. And I, being the glutton that I am, ordered 2 extra slices of pork, or I should say not extra slices because we've got 2 slices of beef, but I added 2 slices of pork on top of that. So yeah, a little bit more meat in mine. And one thing I would recommend before diving into the noodles with those chopsticks is grabbing a bit of soup.
Okay.
That'll give you a sense of what that ramen is all about.
Go ahead.
Should I demonstrate?
Yes.
I don't want to gross people out, but in Japan we slurp our ramen. I grew up here and I eat a ton of ramen, and 3 reasons, let's say, why people may slurp. One is that you're cooling it down. Ramen is hot. It's served hot in Japan. You're cooling it down. 2, you're complimenting the chef. Don't worry, they're not going to chase you out of the ramen restaurant if you're not slurping. They won't be insulted if that doesn't happen. 3, you are also taking in more air through your nose, arguably enhancing the flavors because there's oxygen going in, just like with wine, for example. So for these 3 reasons, people tend to slurp here. Not a requirement. I can turn it on or off, but I can show you what that looks like. Here's with slurping.
The secret, of course, is the hardest part is at the end of the slurp. Not getting it to flick and get all over your shirt.
That is tricky. Well, we do have these for those. If that helps, we've got bibs here.
You get a bib.
Oh, is that a bib? Oh, there you go.
I like the burdock too.
I haven't seen that in any other ramen.
The
like
burdock.
that. Yeah, burdock in itself is already quite rare
Okay.
in ramen. And the deep fried, what they're doing there, definitely not your typical preparation. Usually they'll just boil it. Or...
So same burdock? Burdock is the same?
I think it's the same as grows in our yard.
Yeah. Oh, you have some in your yard now.
Yeah.
You're growing them. That's wonderful.
Assuming it's the same.
You can replicate this bowl.
That'd be a lot of work. So when is the most common time for people to eat ramen?
Sorry?
Like when do most people eat, when is, like, is there a common, is it a lunch thing? It's clearly a late
Lunch
night
and
thing.
dinner. Lunch, dinner, late night.
Oh, so that's everything.
Breakfast is less common, but there are some places in the country where they serve breakfast ramen, like that's a thing. But for the most part, lunch or dinner. Post World War II, this was all built around that makeshift little bars. And this particular alleyway is more about food than drink. You have both food and drink, but a lot of places serve yakitori or chicken skewers.
How come? Oh, no, I think we were supposed to do that.
It's okay, don't worry. No problem.
Okay, so as soon as I step in, I can smell that this is not your average
Typical.
ramen shop.
I'm gonna get the egg. And if you both, yeah, you can smell that sea bream.
ラーメンですね。
ありがとうございます。写真撮っても大丈夫？
はい、大丈夫です。
ありがとうございます。So yeah, for that guy, going in that one.
So Julie's got dipping ramen.
Sorry, my.
And I have the lighter sea bream ramen. You used to have the richer sea
The
bream
rich
ramen.
sea bream ramen. And then what is the meat that's in this? Is that pork?
So it's actually pork.
Okay.
And
So just throw it in?
1枚ならいいんですけど、動画はちょっと
あ動画はちょっと
ずっと置いとくのは
あなるほど。
危ないので。
あ、そうですね。どうですか、動画であればそこは大丈夫。写真だけ。Yeah, they're a little fussy about the 動画。
Okay, so we just had 2 bowls of ramen.
I'm full.
Julie's full, I'm full. I can't eat that much anymore. But between us, we had ramen that I've never had before. Ramen well outside of the norm. And that last bowl made from sea bream was incredible. I've never had fish-based ramen before. Can you tell us about that? What was going on there?
Certainly. I think, first of all, sea bream is a delicious fish. It's got a softer flavor, I think, compared to, say, sardines, for example. Sharper fish flavors with sardines, mackerel. Sea bream, much softer landing. As such, it's really a gently flavored soup. And they use sea bream so well there. I got the lighter one. Glenn got the richer one.
Creamy?
The creamier.
creamier.
It was really, really, really great mouthfeel with just a very light flavor from the sea bream.
Right.
And it had little pieces of charred sea bream in it. It was amazing. Really amazing.
So yeah, starting with sea bream, ending with sea bream with some of those pieces of sea bream, and then Julie had the dipping sea bream. So I think each of them are a little bit different. You know, mine's maybe the most delicate. Yours is richer but delicate at the same time from the sound of things, because I actually haven't had that one before. And then with the dipping one, right, I think the soup was much more concentrated.
Yes.
Stronger sea bream notes, I think, as you put it.
I tasted Julie's, and the sea bream note was really strong. Like it was strongly flavored.
Right.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Great that I got to taste that. And the one with the matcha earlier today just blew me away.
Quite the contrast.
Just blew me away. Yeah.
Very different. Very different.
So many different flavors.
We've just scratched the surface today. Of course, we did a good job scratching the surface, but there's so much out there, absolutely. Beyond maybe what people normally think of when it comes to ramen. Pork bone ramen, for example. A lot of the time, that's all you get outside of Japan. We had sea bream and matcha ramen today. Couldn't be more different.
Okay, so Frank, for everyone who's coming to Tokyo, how do they get in touch with you?
Oh, thank you. Yes. If you type in ramen, my face will probably pop up at one point. But 5 a.m. ramen with the number 5 is where you can find me. 5 a.m. ramen across all social media channels, and yeah, you'll come across my content.
Great YouTube channel, and you do fantastic tours here in Tokyo for ramen.
You were fantastic company.
Thanks for stopping by, everybody. We're having a great time in Tokyo. Thanks, Frank, for helping us.
Thank you. Lovely meeting both of you.